All right, friends. For our second reading today, we hear a lesson from 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 through 14. Listen now for the word of the Lord. Naaman, commander of the army, the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. Now the Arameans, on one of their raids, had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of leprosy." So Naaman went in and told his lord just what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said, "Go then, and I will send along a letter to the king of Israel." He went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to give death or life that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message to the king. "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go, wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean." But Naaman became angry and went away, saying, "I thought that for me he would surely at least come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and would have waved his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" He turned and went away in rage. But his servants approached and said to him, "Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when all he said to you was, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. His flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Friends, let's venture back in time. 30 centuries ago, nearly 3,000 years before today, Israel and Aram, which is now Syria, had just been at war. Israel lost. Now, Aram's top commander had played a key role in securing this victory for the king. The commander's name was Naaman. Once a glorious and celebrated warrior, now in his retirement, he develops leprosy, and he's covered in sores and rashes. He's untouchable. He's now an outcast, the least of the least and the lowest. And he's desperate for a cure. This is where our story begins. Now, at the conclusion of the fighting, Naaman had brought home a war prize for his wife. It was an Israelite girl who had become a slave in their household. She was their prisoner, helpless to ever return to her home, and at their mercy. Now remember, Naaman had killed countless numbers of her people, her friends, her family. This was her life now, enslaved by the very one who slaughtered her city. She was a nothing. Worse than that, she was considered so unimportant to Naaman, now a leper. She was a nothing too, a nothing. And she does not even deserve a name in our story today. Now, if you think about it, this story still would have stood really well on its own, without a mention of this girl at all. It is an epic story. In fact, we only go to verse 14 in the lectionary. Verse 15, we find out that Naaman undergoes a conversion. That's incredible. So why mention this girl at all if she's not an essential part of the story? Well, the girl opens up a chain of events like a ripple in the ocean that over time it becomes a giant tidal wave. From her low position, she could have been written off, considered dumb and superstitious for her foreign ways, to suggest that Naaman would be healed by some miracle of her God from her country. Or even worse, Naaman could easily have had her killed for even the suggestion of going into her country, like a plot to torture, imprison, or kill him. After all, she had no reason to help this man. No reason to stick her neck out for someone who murdered her entire family. And yet, from a place of vulnerability, she takes a chance and she asks a question. What if? What if she could help him? What if he actually listened? Now, these are some really big risks. But it gets bigger. You see, Naaman does listen, and he asks his king for permission to go into Israel on the chance that this miracle might happen. But what if? What if it does happen? What if Israel's God is real? And what if God does care for the likes of Naaman? What if God really does equip individuals with gifts of wisdom, insight, healing, and goodness? What if we took that chance and we held on to hope despite the reality of fear and violence that we see every day all around us? Naaman killed the king's father personally. He burned cities to the ground. It's like asking the people of Ukraine to heal Putin. What if God's people, who are called to be more, to be loving, actually were those things? It's radical, isn't it? What if? What if God's reach here is so significant that it spills out beyond God's chosen people, out of Israel and onto the world of non-believers? What if God's reach is so big that it even spills on to us? What if grace and new life really will save us all? What if we did not see hopeless cases as hopeless or strangers and enemies, but what if we saw instead opportunities to love, opportunities to be courageous with hope? There's so many stories out there about courage and hope, but one of my favorites, I'd love to share it with you today. It's a story about the what-ifs of life. Seeing fear, saying your prayers, and conquering it with an act of hope and courage. This story was reported in the LA Times Syndicate years ago, and it reads, "One wet and miserable morning in Ohio, Ray Blankenship was making breakfast when he looked out the window onto the open stormwater drain that ran alongside his house. And what he saw in that instant terrified him. A small girl was being swept down the drain. And he also knew that further downstream from that drain, the ditch disappeared with a roar underneath the road. And so Ray ran out the door and he raced along the ditch, trying to get ahead of the little girl, racing and racing, and then he hurled himself into the deep and churning water. And he surfaced and he was able to grab onto the child's arm. And they tumbled end over end within about 1 meter of the drain going under the road. Ray's free hand felt something protruding from the bank, and he grabbed onto it, and he held on for dear life. If I can just hang on until help comes, he thought. But he did better than that. By the time the fire department rescuers had arrived, Ray had pulled the girl to safety. and both were treated for shock. On April 12th, 1989, Ray Blankenship was awarded the U.S. Coast Guard's Silver Life-Saving Medal. The award is fitting. Ray Blankenship was at even greater risk to himself than most people knew. You see, Ray can't swim. So what if? What if Ray stood there in his kitchen and decided that somebody else was going to take care of it? Somebody was already on it. Somebody else would save her. What if he got to that roaring water and the fear overcame him? What if he had jumped in and drowned? What if? But he looked out that window, and instead he said, "What if I can save her?" Courage is fear that has said its prayers. And hope is taking the flip side of the what if and choosing to pursue it. And faith is when we believe it. Remember, for truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, says Matthew 17, you can move mountains. You can change the landscape of your heart, of your society, of your world. Like a small ripple that grows with momentum and becomes a tidal wave, even a little girl without a name can make a world of difference in the lives of kings and prophets and warriors. So imagine if one nameless girl can set off a chain of events that can lead a major figure to conversion, as we would read in verse 15. What could an entire church community do? A new chapter is beginning here at RRPC. And I know I feel the energy in this room, but do y'all feel the energy in this room? Can you feel the ripples of the things that you have done in the past, not only this past year, but all the way back to your beginning? Now, with all the news of inflation, of wars, political tensions, racial and ethnic divides, what if? What if, with the shortage of pastors in the PCUSA, churches closing every single week, pews for sale or for free on the side of country highways, the rise of atheism, and the rapid spread of toxic and shallow theology in our nation, the lack of empathy? What if we, with our own troubles here in this church, don't make it? What if we don't grow? What if this is as good as it gets? What if we never get that budget up? Sorry. Sorry, God. What if we fail to attract the next generation? What if the world pulls us asunder with its madness? But my friends, so often and so easily we forget. Is God not bigger than the politicians and the militaries and the economy? Is God not alive here in this congregation that gathers and worships every Sunday? Is God not there with the congregation who gathers in the rubble of ruins in Ukraine? Is God not there at the bedside of the sick and in the tears of the mourning? Does God not look upon the injustice with a fierce unrest? And is God not on the move in the hidden places, pulsing through the veins of the broken and the downtrodden? Did God's arms not extend as far as the east is from the west to show us just a hint of the infinite, transcendent love as his Son breathed his last tortured, shaking breath among us? Can God not raise us up the way that God raised mountains and formed seas? So what if? What if we make mistakes? What if we don't always get it right? We're human. But what if? What if our little lights of faith within us, what if they grow and they become together a blinding light that catches and spreads like a wildfire to beat back what would stand in the way to snuff out hope in something bigger and better and real? What if we, in our own vulnerability, open ourselves up to chance and take the plunge into the roaring drain or the dirty river Jordan and find ourselves made whole on the other side, because in God there is healing? And what if the risks before us are opportunities to thrive? I know it's scary. It's always scary. But what if we take those risks and we find family there? What if that's where we find love and togetherness and connectedness? And what if that is the kingdom? This story happened 3,000 years ago, and it still survives because of the ripple that girl started. It's still in motion. It's like a hurricane that is swirling and catching up in it all who would let go of what ties us down, our fears, our doubts, our second guesses. And I will say this again and again and again, because I believe it. It does not matter if you are 2 years old or if you are 102 years old. You have a job to do. It does not matter if you don't have money or if you've got lots of it. God empowers even the nameless and the small to do great things. So why not you? Why not you? Why not now? What if your purpose, wherever you are in your life, what if your purpose is still in motion? What if you are the ripple? And what if we together are part of that great tidal wave? Round Rock Presbyterian, this is the beginning of something beautiful, and you have been stirring, you have been moving, you've been preparing and waiting, and God is shouting to you. Can you not hear it? God is shouting to you through the ways of providence. We have everything that we need. So let's go. Let's get swept up in it, shall we? Let's shout Geronimo and just go crazy. Let the neighbors talk about us, all right? We're going to be that church. And let's have a blast doing it. Let's do this thing. Let's raise one another up in faith so great that we can move mountains, and let's lose control. Christ is alive here, he is wild, he is chaotic, and he is free, and he is reaching out to you in those deep waters to take us on the ride of a lifetime. So what if it is incredible and fantastic and wonderful and beautiful and abso-freaking-lutely awesome? Round Rock Presbyterian, let's do it. Let's take the plunge. What if? Amen.
Let's all stand and sing our next song.